Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Mila and today I'm just going to be doing a fairly simple video, but it's going to be sort of like a beginner's guide on how to becoming a reader, how to add reading to your reading habits, and how to get over your fear of books. I apologize for the yelling. How to get over your fear of books that are over 1,000 pages long and to read them without, having the page count be your main obstacle. But other things that are your main obstacle that sort of should be your main obstacle, because page count, not your main obstacle. Shouldn't be, at least. So I just want to talk about why reading is important. Helps your brain develop, it expands your vocabulary, it expands your imagination, it helps you develop in other areas in life. For example, reading is the reason why I have such an expansive vocabulary just in general, and people have told me that it's one of the first things that they notice about me is that I tend to use bigger words than most people would, or I structure my sentence is slightly different than others. So yeah, I'm smart because of books. I'm smart because I read. I know a lot of things about writing and stories and storytelling and world building and characters and plot and arcs because I grew up a reader. And just to backtrack, my sort of history with reading, I learned English when I was 7 years old, when we moved to Canada, because I was 7 years old. And someone took me to the library for the first time. And back home, I don't really remember having libraries, in tiny, country of Tajikistan that's like landlocked. Reading would have been an important thing in schools had I gone to school back home, but I didn't. We moved before I had started grade 1, but here it would be in grade 2, just because of the ages. That's how it works out. And so I was taken to the library and I found the Magic Treehouse book, which was, I believe it's called Blizzard of the Blue Moon. It has a unicorn on the cover as a Merlin mission, and that was it, really. That was the book that started it all and everything, and I just fell in love with reading, and I would just read anything that would be put into my hands. And obviously as school came along, we had like English classes and we were forced to read books. I enjoyed those books. I enjoyed most of them. Although high school is when it sort of started to deviate, and I was like, okay, some of these I'm going to keep at arm's length. Some of them, if I read them now, I would thoroughly enjoy more than I did at the time that we were forced to read them. Some I still have fond memories of because I genuinely enjoyed reading them as we were doing it in English class. For example, Macbeth remains one of my favorite Shakespeare plays, like, of all of the ones that we read. And we read, I believe, King Lear, and we also read Romeo and Juliet, and Twelfth Night. Twelfth Night is another one that we read. Out of all the 4 that we've read, Macbeth was my favorite and remains to be my favorite, and I just love the story of it all. And what else can I tell you? It teaches you new things, as I said before, and it helps you infer, so it helps you read between the lines, helps you think creatively, critically, analytically, imaginatively. It helps expand your imagination, as I said before. And because the skill of reading is so expansive, you can apply what you learn in books over other mediums. For example, you can make a great movie based on not just watching other movies and taking inspiration, but reading books and taking inspiration from the way that the story is told, right? Whether it's chronological or out of order, or kind of going back and forth, whether it's one POV or 2 POVs, that kind of thing. And yeah, you will also become an insanely interesting person. I've never met an uninteresting reader. Never met an uninteresting reader. Because even if you don't like the books that they read, even if you don't like the books that they've enjoyed, lower it a little bit. Even if you don't like the books that they've enjoyed, you're still going to want to hear their opinion of why they enjoyed these books. Like, let's say we're not going to talk about like the controversial authors, okay, the authors that are actually terrible people and do not have well-written books. Although terrible authors and terribly written books do seem mutually, conclusive in a sense, mutually inclusive, so to speak. But let's say we're taking a book that's like incredibly well written, right? But the author is a terrible person. You're still gonna want to hear why this person loved the book so much despite the author being a terrible person. What if the book is great and, the author is also an okay person, but you just didn't enjoy the book? What was it about the book that you didn't enjoy? And what was it about the book that was up at the other person's alley? Like there are some books that I loved. But I know that some of my reader friends, they would hate it. They would hate these books. I know so many people that would hate this just because, well, first off, there's stuff about Brandon Sanderson that people don't like, but just because, they might take away different things from this book than I did. I know seen people not enjoying Mistborn. I enjoyed the hell out of Mistborn. I've heard people, not enjoying Percy Jackson, or, being someone who didn't like Percy Jackson when they were younger and then got into it as they were older, that kind of thing. So obviously having different opinions will just make you an insanely interesting person. And yeah, so my first tip is going back to the whole school thing. Remember that you're not in school. I'm only going to be talking about books as a hobby and as a fun thing, as a fun habit in a sense, because I feel like when we hear the word habit, it refers to things that we don't really want to do, but we're forcing ourselves to do so that it comes more naturally. In this case, reading can be that, right? You might not enjoy it at first, right? Forcing yourself to do it, but then once it gets easier and once it becomes a part of your daily routine, as easy as breathing or blinking, then you will enjoy it much more. So obviously it's going to be difficult at the beginning, as all habits are, but I don't want you to take the word habit as a negative connotation, because again, getting up at 5 o'clock, that could be a really hard habit, but it will work for you if that's what you think will work for you, so you got to make it work for yourself, right? So just remember that you're not in school anymore. No one is expecting you to write an essay, to do an in-depth analysis, do a think piece, to do a presentation. Like, no one is expecting that from you. You can obviously do it. You can do whatever the hell you want with the information that you got from this book. You can make a video of it. You can write an essay. You can write a blog post. You can write a book review. You can take a pretty picture of the book on Instagram and say that, oh, I hated this book sucks. Like, you can literally do anything with it because no one's going to be grading you. Reading is meant to be a hobby and meant to be for enjoyment, okay? You can always annotate. You can do whatever the hell you want with it. Reading is, it's not exclusive to certain points. The next tip I have is learn how to find the book for you. Understand yourself as both a person in general, your likes and dislikes, and also as a reader, because the two might be different, but there's going to be some overlap in the Venn diagram, okay? So we're imagining a Venn diagram. I'm gonna go back to school for a little bit. Imagining a Venn diagram, and that part in the middle is you, just yourself as a person and yourself as a reader, just sort of what overlaps. So for example, I am actually an introvert, although I make YouTube videos, and once I'm comfortable with a person, I don't shut up. But I am an introvert, okay? I'm an introvert who loves crocheting, who loves reading, who loves music, who loves a lot of things, who loves history. And as a reader, I am into long fantasy books. I love long fantasy books. The fact that I'm an introvert and long fantasy books, that's the overlap, because I'm okay with being by myself in a world, right? So that's sort of overlap I'm talking about. Sometimes it's straight up, oh, okay, I like the TV show, Bones, and I like the slow burn friends to lovers aspect that goes on in the romance between Brennan and Booth. So Brennan is the main character who Booth calls Bones, and I like the way that it progresses and the way that, you know, Booth starts calling her Bones and Brennan's like, don't call me Bones, and then she sort of gives up saying, don't call me Bones. Or, for example, I like the found family aspect. So we have Brennan, who's sort of like the mom of them all, you know, and Booth, who's like the dad, and then you have just like the kids. You have Zach, you have Hodgins, you have Angela, you have, you know, all these different characters that come in and they are like important to the lab and important to the life of the main character. You know what I mean? Like, it's just find the overlap. Find the overlap, and there's so many lists on Google, there's so many videos on YouTube. Don't go on to Book Talk yet, I'm telling you right now. So there are so many ways to find the right books for you. So, like, again, and you can make it even simpler. If you like Criminal Minds, you like mystery, you like thrillers, you like true crime, right? Try Agatha Christie. Sometimes it works for people, sometimes it doesn't. It's a hit or miss, depending, you know. Because Agatha Christie is, like, the queen of mysteries. Like, she's the person you want to go to if you want to, you know, really experience, like, crime, right? Really experience murders. If you, for example, like fantasy, if you like the show Game of Thrones, but you want something on the, like, less, I guess, gruesome side, then try, you know, literally any fantasy book that's not, like, dark fantasy. It's not, like, grim dark fantasy or military fantasy. Way of Kings actually isn't particularly gruesome, I think. Although it is a chunker, so maybe go for, like, Mistborn or something. I don't think that's particularly gruesome, if I remember correctly. He also has a few standalones that aren't particularly gruesome. If you find adult fantasy, just, like, the thought of, like, walking through the adult fantasy aisle in, like, a bookstore or library intimidating, go for the younger genre. And go for the younger, like, age group books, because those are still incredibly well written, okay? Because that is such a hard, like, age group to get into, like, especially middle grade. Like, the standards are, like, through the roof. You think fantasy is difficult to get into, or books in general, like writing in general is difficult to get through? Middle grade is one of the hardest age groups to really get into, and to get middle graders, okay? Do you know how brutal these kids are nowadays? To get them to read your books, okay? So it's insanely difficult. So if you do want something that is guaranteed for you to enjoy, try middle grade or YA. And by YA, I'm going to give you a couple of options, okay? I'm going to give you a couple of examples so you understand the age range. YA, although it's disputed, can be split up into two sections, okay? Two age groups within the YA umbrella, right? So you have lower YA, which is roughly 13 to, I'd say, 15 maybe. And then upper YA, which is roughly 15 to 18, right? Depending on how mature your kid is or how mature you want it to be, right? Nowadays, YA does have some explicit spice scenes, so explicit 18 plus scenes. When I was back in my day, like when I was reading YA, spice was the furthest thing from my mind. You know, like I was perfectly fine with just like a kissing scene and it just fades to black. That's it. I didn't want to know anything else. Because it also just didn't click in my head what happened. Because, like, oh, I want to continue the story. I don't care about the romance. I was more interested in the story and the characters than I was in the romance, for example. So definitely do some research about it. Middle grade, for example, is Harry Potter and Percy Jackson. Like, so it's literally the first two that I can think of. There are so many wonderful, wonderful middle grade series. There's so many wonderful, wonderful YA series. An example of YA, I said it earlier, that I would tell you guys is The Hunger Games, Divergent, all these like YA dystopians, The Giver. I think The Outsiders is also a YA because a lot of them are teens, I believe. But yeah, so definitely check it out if you are less comfortable with spice scenes or more comfortable with, you know, just like cute stories with like happy ending. You know, if you find sort of the long chapter books intimidating, which is perfectly fine, I'm not gonna judge you. Try graphic novels because a lot of them are really, really, really well illustrated and incredibly well written. I'm not the biggest fan of graphic novels, but like some of the art is just so stunning. Or for example, there could be like one of the TV shows that you love, for example, Avatar: The Last Airbender. I'm talking about the animated one, not the live action one. Like they have graphic novels that expand more in the universe of Avatar: The Last Airbender. That stuff that's not mentioned in the animated version, or stuff that's like, you know, touched upon lightly but not further explored, but they're explored in the graphic novel. So definitely try that. All forms of reading are valid. Switch it up. Try reading something on an e-reader. Try reading, I mean, don't really read on your phone because it, you know, the point of reading is to get away from your phone because we're all addicted to our electronics, right? And yeah, tip number 3 is set a small goal. That small goal, small, okay, really small, really minuscule, okay? If you think that like 10 minutes is a lot, set it for 5. If you think 5 minutes is a lot, set it for 3. Okay, just a small, tiny goal that you think will be achievable in like a short period of time. So if you're like, okay, I'm going to read, you flip through and you're like, okay, the chapter is around 8 pages. I'm going to read 8 pages and then I'm going to stop. That's your goal? Cool. But then you're going to want to read forward because you're going to be curious. Because what if the chapter ends on a cliffhanger? You're not going to want to drop the book, right? You're going to want to continue reading because you're like, what the hell just happened? And that's how you trick your brain. That's all it is, friends. That's all it is. It's just tricking your noggin. You know, it's just tricking the little voice inside your head that says you can't do it, but you're going to say, yes, I can. You're going to trick your brain, and you're going to be all the smarter and the better for it. The next tip I have, if my notebook decides to stay open properly, go to the library or the bookstore and just surround yourself with books. Go to the library and ask them, hey, I want to get back into reading. What do you have? Give them a genre that they can choose from. You know, they will either have the perfect book for you, or they'll be able to hand you off to someone who knows the genre, right? So, apologies for the yelling. My sister and her friend are playing. And, you know, or go to the library, go to the bookstore, go to the librarian or the bookseller, and they will help you, okay? Because librarians and booksellers, I say this as someone who works in a library and also as a book influencer, we are the most passionate people about books. That's literally our job. Our job is books, okay? Our job is books. Our job is knowing about books. Our job is knowing about, you know, books and giving you this information so that it can better your life, you know? Obviously, I work at a university library, so it's a little bit different since all the books are academic, and I don't specialize in all the academic genres, obviously. But, like, I've gone up to people at, like, a bookstore and be like, that's a great book. And they're like, oh, I'm trying to get back into reading. I'm like, you know, there's, like, you could either read that, like, it's a great start, or you could try this as well. Or like, oh, like, what do you like? Oh, I like retellings. Hey, why don't you try this one? I know that Greek mythology and Roman mythology retellings are really popular, but try something new, you know, try something different. It could also pique your interest and open doors for further books on different cultures, you know, stuff like that. So honestly, like, if you see a book influencer in the wild, go ahead and come up to them. Like, if you see me in the wild and they're like, oh, I recognize you, like, come up to me and say hi. Just introduce yourself. I'll be totally chill with that. You know, don't be intimidated if I, for example, have my earbuds in. Like, you know, sometimes I just have my earbuds in, but, like, I'm not actually listening to anything. You know, it's just to block out some stuff. Don't join a bookish community yet because you might feel overwhelmed, unless you're like someone who was a reader and you understand sort of how to navigate these bookish social media spaces, then go ahead. However, if you're completely new to like book talk or bookstagram or booktube or whatever, don't fully join, okay? You can watch a couple of videos here and there, you can see a couple of posts, follow a couple of people, but don't fully immerse yourself, because you're going to be so overwhelmed, especially with the amount of like slang we use and the amount of words we use and the amount of like different terminology that the book world has that someone from the outside will not understand. The next tip is don't be afraid to DNF. If you're not feeling it, leave it. No one's gonna come after you. No one's gonna appear in your bedroom, be like, finish the book. No one's gonna do that. We literally, we don't care. Literally, I do not care. The point of the bookish community is to be able to have different opinions, and that's what everyone has. Everyone has different opinions. And, might I also add, changing your opinions is 100% valid. You can change your opinion. Okay, no one's going to come after you. You can change your opinion 100%. You can be like, oh, okay, I didn't really entirely enjoy this at the time that I read it. But now that I think about it, I kind of want to reread it again. Like, I want to read it again, and ooh, I actually enjoyed this time around. Like, you can definitely, like, you know, change your rating. Obviously, if you, like, go from, like, a 1-star to a 5-star, I'm gonna be a little bit suspicious. I'm gonna be like, okay, what really changed? Like, are you just, like, what shifted, you know? But, like, if you go from, like, I don't know, from a 4-star to, like, a 3-star, like, that's not the end of the world, because that's not that big of a jump, technically speaking. Books may have, you know, come into your life at the wrong time, and that's totally valid. You know, they may have come at the right time, right? They may have been the right thing that you needed at the time, the right format, the right way it's written, the right plot, the right, you know, sort of beats that it hits. And then later on you're like, oh, why did I enjoy that? Like, I'll give you an example for myself, right? When I read Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros, I really enjoyed it. It was trashy, it was fun, had dragons and spice scenes the spice scenes were laughable. But like, I needed something that didn't require a lot of brain cells to understand, like, the world building or whatever, or the character sort of thing. And because I had suffered a death in the family, and I just needed something that was really light and, you know, just fluff in a sense, so not particularly deep into the world, and that was perfect. But then a couple of months later I was like, oh, this sucked. So, you know, I was like, oh, yeah, by the way, my rating does not stand. My original rating does not stand. It sucked. So, you know, it's totally fine to, as long as you're, like, aware of, like, hey, like, this changed. My experience shifted, my opinion shifted, you know, it's totally fine. The next step I have is switch formats. If you are feeling the drag on the physical, try an audiobook. If you're feeling like, if you want to read before bed and you have an e-reader, if you do, I mean, that's great. Read with your e-reader before bed. Like, it doesn't really, you know, you could also, oh gosh, you could also combine formats, which is sometimes what I do. Basically, I am reading while listening to the audiobook. Literally, not kidding. Because I read so fast, the audiobook narrator is speaking as fast as I read. You know, tip number 7, which probably should have been like tip number 3, but whatever, is go back to nostalgic. If you're someone who, for example, grew up reading just as I did, right, and you're just feeling the slump, and you're just feeling like nothing is hitting, go back to the nostalgics that you remember enjoying. So, for example, if I was in a reading slump, I'm always returning to Percy Jackson. Like, that's exactly what I need to be pulled out of a reading slump. Because it's either I reread one of the Percy Jackson books, and I'm like, wow, this shit still hits, because it does, and then I go on to read other books, or I reread, like, the first Percy Jackson book, and then I end up just, like, rereading the rest of the series. And that's great, too, because I'm still reading. I'm still continuing reading, right? Reading is valid in any form, as long as you're, you know, retaining all the information, or, like, retaining this plot and the story and all that stuff. The next, also going back to nostalgics and understanding what you liked about the nostalgics, not just like the memory attached to it, like, you know, a parent reading you the books, but like what you enjoyed about the story itself could also help you understand, like, find the books from current day that have those same motifs. So for example, if you loved listening to, like, if you listened to like The Hobbit being read to you, right, because I know a lot of people did, what did you enjoy from The Hobbit? Was it sort of the found family? Was it the unexpected main character that turns into a hero? Was it the fact that there's like a lot of different magic, but it's not fully explained and there's still some mystery to it, but there are moments where it's like really cool? Was it, the world building, just the start to the world building, that kind of thing? So all those things could be taken and found in a modern book. The next tip I have is carry a book with you everywhere. And I'm not kidding. Carry a book with you everywhere. If you have space, literally set up a small basket in your bathroom and fill it up with like a couple of books. Just like, when you're sitting in the toilet instead of scrolling on your phone, which I know all of you do, okay? No, I know it. I know all of you do that. You're going to be reading a book. Have a book with you everywhere, and I don't mean just on your phone, because we all know that some of us have a problem with, out of sight, out of mind, and you're just going to forget the book on your phone. However, if you have a book with you everywhere, you're going to want to reach for that rather than your phone, And I mean, just like have a book with you everywhere. Like, leave it on your desk, okay? Leave it on your desk while you're working, right? Leave it on your nightstand. I have a bookshelf as my nightstand, so I just leave my current read on the bookshelf. And it has a bunch of books I should read. Surround yourself with books, leave a book on the couch, leave a book on the little, couch table or whatever. Leave a book everywhere. Have a book everywhere. Have a book in your backpack. Have a book in your bag. Whatever. Take a book everywhere with you. If you have an e-reader, even better. Take your e-reader everywhere with you. Even if you don't know whether you'll have the time. I always have my e-reader and a book with me. The next tip I have is track your progress, because we all love filling out the little page count in Goodreads and other apps, and it's cute and it makes us, do a little dance because we're like, ooh, I got 50% through, yippee, let's go. We all know we love that. And you can also make yourself like a little TBR list. Make it fancy. Make it on Canva, print it out, tape it on the wall. Be like, okay, I want to read The Hobbit, I want to read the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and I want to read, I don't know, a short story like, or something like that, right? So they have 3 things. You write them out, or you put them on Canva, you make it pretty, you print it out, you tape it on your wall, and you're like, okay, I gotta read this, I gotta check it off. And then you can check it off and do a little dance, and treat yourself, Use a reading app like Goodreads, Storygraph. Fable has started to, gain popularity because apparently it's like really nice or whatever. So use whatever you want. Goodreads is still the most popular option just because a lot of people are on there and they've been there for a long time. Storygraph is one I would recommend and one I am more active on, though you may see me pop into Goodreads once in a while. Fable, I have not fully tried. I may download it just out of curiosity, to be honest. The next tip I have is swap screen time for reading. So check the day before, okay? Check the day before, and if you have 3 hours of screen time, which honestly you probably don't, because a lot of us have a lot of hours of screen time. But if you have 3 hours of screen time, set a timer for like an hour each day, so you can read for an hour or something like that. Or if you have, you just like take away a little bit of that screen time and put it into book time. That way you'll have less hours of screen time in the moment. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. I don't know. It's harder, but it's worth it. Don't scroll through your phone before bed, and take some time to read a book. Also, you fall asleep faster and you sleep better if you read before bed rather than like scroll on your phone before bed. Just an FYI. The next tip I have is romanticize reading. I know that there are so many articles being like, oh, people are faking that they're reading. They want to just do the romanticizing stuff. Don't listen to that stuff. I mean, it is a real problem sometimes, but like, don't listen to it. If you want to buy this pretty annotation tabs, go for it. It's your money. If you want to buy the pretty pens and the pretty highlighters and all that shit, go for it. If you want to buy the pretty edition, okay, maybe not the pretty edition, but like, just romanticize. If you want to go out to a cafe and buy yourself a cute little treat, go for it. Why the hell not? It's your money. I can't tell you what to do and what not to do with it, but I can be like, hey, like, do whatever you want. Make it fun for yourself. Buy the cute accessories for your books. Buy the cute reading lamp. Buy the Kindle if you need it. Well, I would recommend a Kobo, just an FYI. But buy the cute accessories. Buy the, just like invest in your reading experience and you'll be more likely to read, right? Tip 12 is ambience music. And I don't want to say like listen to music with words because I know a lot of people are distracted by it. I can listen to music with words while reading. I don't really mind it. But like, if you, for example, are reading a really popular book, chances are there is either like a non-word music playlist, like a playlist video, not like a playlist where it's like individual songs in a playlist, but like a playlist video, right, where it's multiple songs in one video. And usually there are like ambience sounds or music or whatever. I know Game of Thrones has a bunch, Lord of the Rings has a bunch, Way of Kings has quite a bit of like ambience music, and there's just so many, right? There's so many, and it helps you get in the mood of reading. Buy yourself like a nice pair of noise canceling headphones, or use your noise canceling headphones or earbuds or whatever, and just put on the music and just focus. Just don't ignore everything else. Put your phone away and just focus on the book, which is what I do. I usually can knock out like 200 pages with that method. If you have kids, you can set up a quiet hour where essentially you're like, okay, you guys play, don't bother me for, as long as you can also set a timer on the thing, right? Unless it's like an emergency, like be like, hey, like bother me only if it's an emergency. Like if someone got really, really hurt, if someone got hurt, let me know. You don't hide that from me. But like if otherwise you need to like, I don't know, do something simple, I think you can figure out yourself. You know what I mean? You read, they do their own thing, and voila, it gets them into the habit of, giving you time and also like learning to be by themselves, but not like being completely alone, which is it's an important thing to know how to do, and learning to not need your constant attention, because some kids are so attached to their parents that it's actually kind of concerning. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it's a ramble. I didn't expect it to be a ramble. I apologize. No, actually, I don't. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know your thoughts down below. Obviously, if you have any questions, if you have any types of books you want me to recommend, if you're looking to get back into reading, let me know. Follow me on all my socials. Check out the link down below, and I will see you in the next one. Happy reading!